Au Canada, on aime montrer cette partie de nation. Mais juste comme chaque autre pays, on a plusieurs d'autres réalités. Plutôt que vous dire ces différentes situations, je vais laisser les citoyens d'Edmonton vous le décrire.
What do you think of Canada as a people or as a place, just in general?
I think Canada as a whole is a pretty respectful country, but I think we have a lot of issues that we don't properly address.
Canada is built off of the genocide of Indigenous peoples, and we have been groomed and manipulated to believe that our society is good and whole, but capitalism has literally been rotting us all.
Multiculturalism, in my opinion, is a failed experiment. I think if you were to ask 1,000 Canadians right now what is Canadian, I think you're going to get 1,000 different answers, which is not good.
I think it's a very vibrant society. We are very diverse, and probably I think we can make it better. And the best thing, I like the part for Canada, most of us Canadians, we think that there's always a room to improve and we can be better and better, you know?
I think Canada is a beautiful, diverse, and multicultural land where people can express themselves and not be ashamed of their religion or culture or any group that they associate themselves with. Canada is, in my opinion, the most beautiful country in the world, and that's why I love being Canadian.
After Kamloops in London, how does that affect how you see Canada as a people or as a country?
It's not surprising, but it's definitely resurfacing a lot of emotions, and just seeing people in my community, especially vulnerable peoples who are survivors of residential schools or are living with trauma, and kind of like veterans, they themselves fought in a war to keep their culture. And I think a lot of the times that's not acknowledged, and I see these people and they're suffering and they aren't given the same respect that others are, and it breaks my heart a lot. So I think it's just breaking my heart a lot more.
We're meant to be, a welcoming place, an accepting place. So that, obviously I'm not even a hijabi person, like I'm a male, but, I have sisters, and my mother, she wears a hijab, right? And the guy that ran over the Muslim family in London was for the sheer fact that they're Muslims. He could tell that they're a minority, and he didn't support them, and he didn't support Islam, and he was somehow, I don't even like the type of hatred you have to do and act like that, right? It's absolutely horrific and horrendous.
It just breaks my heart to understand. The more I learn about what happened, the more it breaks my heart. But I want to be part of the solution and not part of further problems.
I think when people totally misunderstand, first of all, the Catholic Church did not go out and grab Native children. The government and the RCMP grabbed them. The residential schools that you saw that were not built by the Catholic Church, they're built by the Canadian government. Who ran the schools? Nuns and priests, to be sure. At some point, were there cases of sexual abuse? I would suppose there were. Now, everywhere you go, there's sin and there are problems in society. Now, I will tell you one thing. In the course of 100 years of a residential school, there was rubella, there was a Spanish flu, there was rheumatic fever, there was every type of illness. If you go to look at the bishops that have phoned the Canadian government saying, hey, we're short on medicine, we're short on infirmaries, what do we do with this problem here? I find it very hypocritical of the Trudeau government to point the finger only in the Catholic Church's direction when in actual fact, it's a government institution that was staffed by the Catholic Church who did the best they could at that time. So to take values from back then and bring it in the present, how we currently think of things, highly, highly hypocritical. Were mistakes made? In that mass grave of 215 people that died over X number of years, you can't tell me for sure that 60 or 70 died in the Spanish flu and the other 150 died in the next 80 years. So what's really funny is, why did those bodies end up in the mass grave? If anybody actually thinks it was the Catholic Church's decision to put those bodies there, I can tell you right now, they had to talk to the government. So why it's only a slight against the church once again versus the government stepping up? Trudeau says he takes responsibility. Not one time has he taken responsibility.
My sister even, she told me after, she was like, I'm scared to wear my hijab in public. You know, my mother, you know, I've been, you know, with my mother in a car before, and then, you know, we're driving and a guy tells my mother to, you know, go back to where you're from. And we're from Canada, we're Canadians, you know, just like anybody else. In the end of the day, every single person here, white, black, you know, whatever you are, we are all immigrants. You know, we all, you know, some people, they came from way before, but in the end of the day, we're still all immigrants. If you're not a First Nations person, if you're not, you know, an Indigenous person of Canada, then you're an immigrant. So you're as much, you know, a Canadian as anybody else.
If you could say one thing to all Canadians everywhere, what would that be?
Oh God.
I think I would say stay united, stay happy as we are Canadian. Never even think about that what language you speak or what is your color. I think we shouldn't even bring it up, you know.
Don't be an asshole.
Why do we have Canada? I mean, it was, you know, in 1867, the common bond was it was a Christian country, and people came because they were oppressed in other countries.
Start using Canada in quotes. Stop celebrating holidays that literally mark the colonization of these lands. Understand the history of these lands. Learn of who occupied these lands before we came and took these lands from other people. Reframe it in a way that people understand.
Try to be the kindest person you can and always be willing to like hear other people out. Try to hear their story before you make a judgment.
Be kind to one another, and really know that everybody has a different perspective. Your views are based on the life that you had growing up and the way that you were raised and your experiences in life, and they're going to be very different than the next person. And everybody is struggling, has a struggle that you know nothing about. So just be kind and compassionate to those around you.
We can't create a better future without acknowledging the past.
Love one another. You know, you can have differences, all that, right? But you can still, in the end of the day, you know, like respect other people, right? Not everybody has to have the same beliefs. And that's actually the beauty of, you know, living in a world with different people, right? Because then, you know, you get to meet new people, new ideas, new, you know, faces, and get to know new things. So that's the beauty of it. And that's, you know, my message to, you know, Canadians and, you know, the whole world, honestly. Just love one another.
Thank you so much.
That was very, very great.
Absolutely.
That was awesome. Thank you.